We've all heard the reports of the Toronto Raptors being linked to a trade with Giannis Antetokounmpo, but this may not be the only big fish that they're hunting in the offseason. Let's get into it. This is Amateur Sports, everybody. It is the YouTube channel that is completely dedicated to providing you with Toronto Raptors content. In the midst of all this Giannis Antetokounmpo drama that is going on right now with the Raptors, we do need to focus a little bit on the other players the Raptors could be hunting as well. Because, yes, when the reports come out, such as the one from the previous video I did where Brian Windhorst on the Hoop Collective podcast of ESPN was talking about the Raptors and how they were big fish hunting in the offseason, the big name was Giannis.
Any team that wants to make a move this summer, especially a team in the Eastern Conference, you're going to have Giannis on the board.
But that's not the only potential superstar name or big name play that's going to be available for the Raptors to trade for in the offseason. After all, like,
the Raptors are a team that is starting to make noise within the league about looking for a big fish.
Like, as much as there's a possibility that the Raptors can land a player like Giannis Antetokounmpo, it will remain unlikely. The possibility is there. The Raptors have the assets to make it happen, but it's still an unlikely endeavor. But like I said, there's also a few other players they could be looking to get. And Masai Ujiri hasn't always been one for the obvious sort of route. And the obvious route right now is the big pursuit of Giannis. But what if there's a better deal elsewhere? What is a player who is made a little bit more available elsewhere? We're going to be having a look in this video at 4 players the Raptors could be looking at beside Giannis to use their trade assets on, because there is tradable contracts here in Toronto. There is the entire catalog of first-round picks for the future to rely on in making a trade. So let's take a look here, starting with Kevin Durant, bringing this one back. We're like, 3 years removed of this conversation first happening, where the Raptors were very, very heavily linked to a trade for Kevin Durant. I covered it extensively on the channel, and the Raptors at the time had the best position on making a trade for Kevin Durant. The issue was, in the end, Brooklyn solved the situation enough to keep Kevin Durant with the Nets until they could find a better trade partner where they could get a little bit more, and they did so out of the Phoenix Suns. So the Raptors were in the best position, but ultimately Brooklyn were able to just keep a hold of Kevin Durant. Well, the situation is pretty sour right now between the Phoenix Suns and Kevin Durant. So as for Kevin Durant, even in his old age at this point, I still think that there is a lot of value in this player and a lot of value to help the Raptors. But unfortunately for this one, I played a lot with the trade machine, and I just really couldn't come to a trade that I felt even comfortable sharing as a possibility. Kevin Durant makes the same level of money as, and the Phoenix Suns are in a much worse cap position at the moment. So basically, like, any trade that you've seen where you can get Giannis Antetokounmpo, which is like Scotty alongside like Ochai Agbaji and Grady Dick, or it's RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley alongside all the picks. I mean, picks for both of those trades. Those would be like the same kind of trades you'd be looking at for Kevin Durant, and I just don't really see as much value in making that trade, especially at this point in Kevin Durant's career. Like, if you're going to be giving out those sorts of packages, I would want to be targeting a player like Giannis. So in the end, I didn't really see a clear pathway for the Raptors acquiring Kevin Durant. Not to mention that in the last few days, Kevin Durant has shut down the rumors of him getting traded to the Toronto Raptors. So I find this one pretty unlikely. Phoenix is a really difficult trade partner at the moment, so we'll see. I can absolutely see Kevin Durant getting traded. I just can't really see it happening at all for the Raptors. But other superstar names are potentially available. And I mentioned a few at the end of the video I did on Tuesday when I did cover the entire Giannis Antetokounmpo situation at this point. And a name that I have been really enamored with in this offseason, I think the Raptors could make a big push for, is Trae Young. And I know for Trae Young, it's a pretty polarizing player. I feel like at this point, I'm in the minority with my stance on Trae Young, because I really feel like Trae Young is a superstar who elevates winning and would be a fantastic addition to the Toronto Raptors. Yes, there is the issues defensively, but it is outweighed by how much he can control a team's offense. His shooting is incredible. His playmaking is incredible. His pick and roll game is incredible. I think having Trae Young on this team would make Scotty Barnes a whole lot better because it spaces the floor for him and it's playmaking for him. It makes Brandon Ingram better because it spaces the floor for him and gives him some great playmaking. And it makes Jakob Poeltl better to have such a great pick and roll partner next to him. The issue will be now defensively, especially in the guard spots, because we're going to have to give some of that up in order to make this trade happen. And the trade I've built here for Trae Young, I think the only one that really makes sense for the Raptors here is financially, you kind of have to stack on Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett's contracts. Emmanuel Quickley, I think, would have to be in this deal because I think the idea would be you're trading your guard to get the point guard from the Atlanta Hawks. Don't know what sort of situation Atlanta are in right now. Are they going to be rebuilding? They kind of did better than expected after being a selling team at the trade deadline. I think a lot of that was on how good Trae Young was, but I have Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett in here. You do have to trade a lot to get a player of Trae Young's caliber. I've added on 2 picks, including the 9th overall pick for this upcoming draft, along to the 2027 first-round pick. And I think putting in RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley allows you to only go with 2 picks. Now, there definitely could be some scenarios where you could stack things up to make it just Emmanuel Quickley and not have to give another significant player like RJ Barrett. That became a little bit harder to construct. So the way I built it here, Trae Young and then one of the cheaper contracts on the Atlanta Hawks for Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, and 2 first-round picks. I think that this value makes sense. I'm not sure this is the right return for the Hawks, who might be wanting to really stack up on first-round picks in making this deal. But this is definitely a good base and one that could be enticing for the Atlanta Hawks. And I think the Raptors have the stuff to make this trade happen. Again, I think defensively, in the guard spots, we'll have a little bit more difficulty, and that will need to get solved by the Raptors in the offseason, which is always a complicated endeavor for the Raptors to rely on free agency to find that player. So I think you can always assume if the Raptors need help, they won't be finding it in the free agent market. So perhaps other trades need to happen, perhaps striking with the early second-round pick they have from the Portland Trailblazers. Again, that is also easier said than done, but I think it's worth taking this risk on, lacking a little bit defensively in the guard spots. I mean, there's still great defenders in Barnes and Pirtle there, and maybe you can get enough out of somebody else in your roster, like Ochai Agbaji stepping up into a starting 5 potentially because he is a good defender. Put him at shooting guard next to Trae Young. I think there's enough there to hide the defense because that offense would be so potent and I think so successful. Really like the possibility of Trae Young ending up with the Raptors. Somebody I like a little bit less to end up with the Raptors, but I still am a big fan of this player, and I think also could be available in the offseason, is LaMelo Ball. It's no secret that things really haven't progressed with the Hornets since they drafted LaMelo Ball. The Hornets are still kind of in these similar positions. They've had some years where they're on the latter side of the playoff picture, like the 8 seed, but in the last years, this has been a tanking team that isn't really showing signs of stepping out of that and all of a sudden becoming a playoff team, even in this pretty lackluster Eastern Conference. So I wonder if they kind of want to reset it a little bit and stack up on those picks and maybe just build around Brandon Miller a little bit more. If they do choose to go down that route, or potentially if LaMelo Ball does choose to want to go somewhere else, then once again, you could add in Emmanuel Quickley into this deal. But because of LaMelo Ball's contract, you actually don't even need to stack on another big contract like RJ Barrett. You could even go with somebody like Grady Dick to make this trade happen. Same situation here. I've added on the 9th overall pick and a 2027 first-round pick. I think in this scenario, 2 picks feels like it wouldn't quite be enough. It may have to be 3 first-round picks, but, basically, I'm trying to outline what the base of the trade could look like. And if the Charlotte Hornets are tempted by hitting the reset button here, and LaMelo Ball does show a desire to go somewhere else, I think this is one that could materialize. For the Raptors, I think you get a lot of the same qualities that Trae Young brings. I think a little bit less efficient with LaMelo Ball and, a little bit less from a playmaking standpoint. But LaMelo Ball is a fantastic playmaker, is a fantastic shooter, is a fantastic scorer. Is an improved defender compared to Trae Young, which obviously isn't saying very much. But, with the size there, you don't need to hide as much defensively. And I think the same situation could arise here where you have LaMelo Ball at the point guard, Ochai Agbaji did too, and then Scotty Barnes, Brandon Ingram, Jakob Poeltl. That's a team that absolutely can contend in the Eastern Conference. I think LaMelo Ball unlocks a lot of the good things that Scotty Barnes wants to do on the floor and the good things that Brandon Ingram and even Jakob Poeltl want to do on the floor. The bigger issue with LaMelo Ball is the health. Struggles to stay healthy, struggles to stay on the court, but the Raptors in the past have bet on their medical team their athletic team to keep players on the floor, and it has been a successful bet in the past. It's been an unsuccessful bet at times as well, but they could bet on themselves to do that once again. I would be a fan of pursuing a trade for somebody like LaMelo Ball. And the fourth player we have for this video, not going to label him a superstar. I think I would go as far as to label LaMelo Ball a superstar. I would absolutely label Trae Young and Kevin Durant as a superstar. Would not label this player as a superstar, but maybe a superstar fit for a championship level team, because rumors are now coming up about Cam Johnson potentially getting traded away from the Brooklyn Nets. And not the most sound positional fit for the Raptors, because they've got a couple forwards already, but you could be building a super big team, and the fact that Cam Johnson is a terrific defender and a terrific floor spacer would lead me to believe that there still can be success playing him, perhaps, or somebody else even playing a little bit out of position, because I think that some sort of combination of RJ Barrett and picks could make this trade happen. Unfortunately, RJ Barrett's getting included in a lot of these. I've talked about it a lot on the channel. I'll do my classic preface. I like Barrett. He's a good player. I don't think he's a great fit with this roster. He's the easiest guy to be labeled as the odd man out for this Raptors group. I think that Brooklyn could be enticed by Barrett kind of starting this rebuild charge here, because Barrett is a player who can get his own from a scoring standpoint. Maybe not the most efficiently, but he does have scoring prowess. He did show some playmaking prowess last season with the Raptors. I think it's a pretty decent fit for Brooklyn overall, especially like Barrett's still quite young and can still develop. But the Raptors would have to stack on some draft capital. And the draft capital I've laid out in this trade scenario here is the 9th overall pick and the Portland Trail Blazers 2nd round pick. And that would have the Raptors trading down essentially for the 19th overall pick in the upcoming draft and the 26th overall pick in the upcoming draft. Is it enough for Cam Johnson? Maybe if Brooklyn really likes somebody else in that area, because they already have the 8th overall pick, so maybe they like somebody else enough to go for the 9th overall pick. This doesn't necessarily need to be the exact trade package. Could it just be Cam Johnson, RJ Barrett for some combination of picks involved? Absolutely could, but I don't think it'll be to the level of what I think LaMelo Ball could be worth or Trae Young could be worth. This is just an idea here, but the idea around RJ Barrett and picks for Cam Johnson, I definitely think could work for the Raptors, and I do think it would work for the Nets. I mean, if you're a fan of the Nets, the Hornets, or the Hawks, and you hate the trade that I've come up with here, let me know in the comments down below. If you're a Raptors fan who likes anything or doesn't like anything, you can also let me know in the comments down below. But as for Cam Johnson's fit, positionally, I'm thinking you still got Emmanuel quickly. Barnes can take on still a lot of the ball handling duties that negates the need for a second guard on the court a little bit. You've got the floor spacing from Cam Johnson as the power forward. Brandon Ingram can just do his thing and what you expect him to do as a player. And Jakob Poeltl still has the exact same role. I think that Cam Johnson does add on to the spacing, does improve the fit of the team a little bit, becomes a little bit less clunky, and I think the Raptors would even have enough in this scenario to put themselves in a real threatening playoff position, especially if Scottie Barnes continue to grow and maybe take a jump next season. I think he's got better capabilities of doing that in this sort of lineup. So 4 players laid out: Kevin Durant, Trae Young, LaMelo Ball, Cam Johnson, absolutely possibilities. Giannis is another one. What other possibilities are out there for the Raptors? We shall see.